Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I'm going to be walking through a tarot exercise, not one that I've created myself. It's actually from this book, the Tarot Activity Book by Andy Matzner. The name of the exercise I'm going to be walking through is the Tarot Mandala, and it says the objective is to use sacred geometry as a tool for reflection and healing. This one appealed to me quite a bit. I personally am a fan of using the cards for more than just divinatory readings. I like to use them to look at life differently, to create activities, and to interact with the world in different ways. I thought it would be nice to showcase as I actually use and do this exercise for myself. This was actually sent to me by Andy Matzner. He reached out to me and offered to send most of his works to me. This is not sponsored. I was not asked to show any of his work at all. This is just something I personally feel compelled to share, and I thought it would be nice to show this exercise. I tend to come up with a lot of exercises and tarot spreads on my own, but there are so many great thinkers and creators out there, and I would love to showcase their work and have ideas other than my own to be able to interact with for the purposes of readings and exercises. So we're going to be using this. I actually had this book for a little bit and it was on my reading list, or at least, this isn't one that I think you would read cover to cover. It's one that you would interact with and use different exercises depending on what you're looking for. But in Katie Flower's recent favorites video, she mentioned this book and how much she was enjoying the exercises within it. So I will link both Andy's website and links for this book, as well as Katie's favorites video down below. I believe she mentioned that she was either going to use one of these exercises in a video. I'm not sure if she has yet when this is going to be uploaded. I will link her channel down below regardless. So without further ado, we're going to move to a space where it's easier to actually conduct this exercise. The deck that I'm going to be using is the Rider-Waite playing card deck. It's nice, it's fun, it's cute, it's small, and I've been enjoying it a lot lately for readings and teaching purposes. It's essentially just the Rider-Waite, but with an emphasis on, I would say, maybe the numerology, or at least it's laid out in a way that's very similar to playing cards in that you get the numbers in the corners, so you don't have to deal with the Roman numeral. It's more playing card size, and then instead of knights, the knights are categorized or put in as jokers, so that way it's more fitting with what a playing cards system would be. So without further ado, we'll get down into an area where I can lay these out to make a tarot mandala and walk through the exercise. All right, everyone, so we are here with the deck and the book. We now have a little bit of space to be able to do this mandala exercise. We might be tight and cramped for space, so I'll do what I need to in terms of being able to show the cards and illustrate the entirety of this. Here is some background on the exercise that Andy has given us. It's sort of a mixture of the background on more of the Eastern tradition and history surrounding the idea of a mandala and the practice of creating mandalas, coupled with a more psychological aspect that might be incorporated. There's a good deal of psychology within these exercises, so for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the background, but you may pause it if you'd like to read. And we are really going to begin at the point that says process, where we get into it. I have read the background, so I'm not skipping it, but I'm not going to fully read it. So for the process, the first point is really to select a background, which might be of importance. I wanted to select this one just because it's a big blanket, but I do like the really soft, sort of pink, peachy tone. I think it's very soothing, to me at least. There is a point where you can mark off certain points with markers. For the sake of the video and just in general, I have crystals that have kind of created a frame around it, so I guess that is a part of the mandala, even if it wasn't intentional. Next, it says to focus on picking the central card, and apparently that's going to be the biggest, most important point, the sort of sun to the solar system in which every other card is going to gravitate around it. There's a good deal of flexibility in how you might go about this exercise. There's no one way to conduct it. You might start from the center and work outwards, it says. You might start from the outside and work your way in. You might try to focus in on how you're feeling and start with that as a center point, or where you believe you're at in life. I'm going to pick one that just feels right for who and how I am right now. and I'm going to use the other cards to maybe illustrate a path that I could see myself going in, or cards that I feel resonate with me. This, to me, is more of an intuitive exercise, one that I'm meant to learn from upon reflection, rather than to be extremely critical and measured in my approach while I actually do it. So I'm going to glean a lot of the answers and helpful tidbits from this following after I've completed and made the mandala. I want to not think too much about it as I'm actually going through the process. So we see that the process happens here. It could be like an art project, and then there are some journaling points towards the end or questions to consider. Notice your design. What colors and form did you use? What did the mandala say about who or where you are right now in life? Then either silently or in your head or by writing in your journal, reflect on the process of creating this art project. Was it difficult or did it flow easily? What emotions and thoughts arose while you were engaged in making it? How did you know when you were finished? What role does the tarot card or cards play in your design? You can also meditate on or write down in your journal what the mandala evokes in you now that you reflect on its imagery. An option, if you are so inclined, is to create a poem to go along with your art piece. So that's what we've got there as far as questions, journaling prompts. So you can use this in a lot of different ways. And I think that the actual creation of the mandala is just really the start of what this exercise speaks to or is symbolic of. It's about what comes after. So that being said, let's move into the way that I'm choosing to go about this. So I'm going to pick my central card and come right back. We'll lay that out. I'm personally thinking that I'm going to have my central card create a bit of a spiral, and then I'm going to create a bit of an outer shell that would be more like a crust to contain the spiral. And my thinking there is that the spiral is more infinite. It has movement and flow. It either is going inward or outward, and it's kind of hard to tell when it's stationary in the way that this will be. And the outer shell is meant to create form. For me, that's more about the physical embodiment, the boundaries, the sort of body or corporeal element to existence. So that is how I'm choosing to approach this. You might, for example, create rays and view it more as a burst of light or energy. I think the options are, there are a myriad of options. So I'm going to pick that central card, come back, and the rest is going to be based around that central card. All right, you will notice that I've chosen Temperance as my center point card. I'm actually in a year of Temperance, so this is really fitting, but it is a card that I have favored and resonated with quite a bit in the last year or so. It's one of the few cards that I have a dedicated video for. It's a card that I found myself journaling on quite a bit in regards to my life and my spiritual practice. I feel very connected to what this card represents, and it is something that I strive for as far as major arcana cards go, more so than I find myself yearning to learn from the others. So for me, this is very poignant and fitting, and it works for the mandala. So I'm going to put this at the center, and I think how I'm going to go about this is to pick cards that I see as being along my path of attainment for this card, working from the outside inward to the point where this is what the ultimate goal to be achieved is. This is what I'm striving for, and I'm going to create the pathway to get there. Okay, so it seems as though I've created quite the mandala off screen. I thought it might be easier that way rather than sitting here as I hand select the cards and putting you all through that grueling process. So now that it is complete, I'm going to explain why I've chosen each card and how it's structured. I mentioned that, of course, Temperance is our center card, and I wanted to create a spiral on the inner portion of the mandala that led to what this card symbolizes as far as where I'd like to see myself and my path to attaining it. So this is the inner portion right here, and the cards that create a bit of that ring like I was speaking to before are more about my external life and experience, and this is more of my inner journey and pathway and where I'd like to wind up, essentially. So we'll start on the inside. Of course, Temperance is speaking to and about balance I'd like to see in my life, attainment of peace and harmony, fulfillment, contentment, a place where I feel like all is kind of flowing and existing, and I am within a life and a state of being where I'm not yearning for something in a certain way. if that makes sense. So the path that I created for that, from starting from the outside in, we've got the Devil. To me, that's more so overcoming any sorts of things that might be holding me back in the material realm, things that draw me in, things that I'm attached to. I guess this would be where we take the journey of non-attachment, or trying to find intrinsic value in life and existence that isn't predicated on the material world or outside factors that are very fragile. Things like things that look pretty, just things that kind of material items and possessions that I think I want to acquire and attain, that are going to make me happy, that will ultimately not. So we've got that. Seven of Wands is more of that struggle to get past that, and I guess against societal values where the materialism and the consumption is the normalized value system, and fighting against that can feel like you are up against the world. And so I do need to have to be prepared to confront that as I move forward. It's not even just me working against myself. In some ways, it can be working against larger forces at play and not receiving necessarily the support that I might think I would. Next, we've got that Three of Swords. For me, that's that tough love, or that shattering of the illusion eventually, once I've pushed myself to a certain point where the realization that the material values are not going to fulfill me actually sets in. It's not just something I want, but I genuinely feel it. But I haven't quite gotten to the point where I understand how I'm going to proceed. So there might be this feeling of intense sadness or transformation of a new reality. That is depicted through the Tower, where things collapse. I can see a lot of outer points in my life, or inner points within me, falling to the wayside, things that were false, things that were connected to this value system, sort of collapsing. Next, we've got the Eight of Cups. That one's going to be more symbolic of the journey that comes after, that solitary pilgrimage that I tend to think of with the Eight of Cups, where you're off on your own, you're leaving behind what is known in favor of something that you don't quite understand yet, but you're well on your journey at this point. Next is the Ten of Wands. This is when the real work starts, and when it can feel very overwhelming and like you've got everything on your shoulders now. There's everything to do and learn. You're adapting to a new set of values and way of being and interacting with the world, and I think that can be highly overwhelming in a lot of ways. In some regards, I do feel like I'm very much within all of this at the moment. I'm not sure exactly if I could pinpoint an exact step that I'm at, but I do think it would be closer to this portion rather than the first 2 or 3 cards. But yes, that's what we see here. Then we've got the Chariot. That's the journey, that's putting in the work, that's the mobility and progress through into that new portion. And I do think that right before reaching Temperance comes the Ten of Swords, the ultimate surrender to all that is and could be, that point where you finally give in and allow yourself to sort of not disintegrate, but reach a point of true non-attachment where the outside world and even your sense of self dissolves to a degree in order to be, I guess, reborn. In a lot of spiritual paths speak to something similar, but following that final hurdle is where I see Temperance to reside and where I would attain it. Then we have my outer world here, factors that I have to contend with in my life, things like maintaining, for example, financial and resource-driven security and stability and safety. That's something that I still need to maintain, despite wanting to have this element of not relying upon, for my sense of self and values, these material goods. I do need to maintain that as well. So there is a balance. We've got the Four of Cups. That's perhaps disinterest that might come in regards to certain things in life, needing to say no and say yes at the right points, perhaps feeling disenchanted while on this road. Judgment is the higher calling and seeking that out. That is paying attention to what is around me, being mindful, living in the present, not letting things pass me by, those larger life moments that I do really need to still be present for. This is not about becoming a monk or I would say a spiritual guru of any sort. This is really about just me reaching a point that I feel is good for myself, I guess. It's not necessarily that there's an end goal in mind, but I do see Temperance as being representative of where I'd like to be. Then we've got the King of Wands. To me, this is me being my own boss, a self-starter, having lofty goals in life and going after them, really embodying and walking the talk. And this is the kind of personality type I want to, and the archetype, I guess, that I want to embody on that road. We've got the Eight of Pentacles here. This is about putting in the work. Again, like I said, walking the talk, walking the talk and actually putting in the effort, the craft that comes with what I do. I can't just embody who I'd like to become. I do need to actually go about, the actual tasks and practices involved. The Four of Wands is symbolic of my family and my life there, and needing to have a vested effort and presence within this space, and the importance of that connection and how meaningful it is to me, and never, I guess, losing sight of that. Seven of Cups is about the illusion and overcoming the various temptations that may cross my road, not even just in terms of the tangible world, but even ones that might attract me to want to go in different directions and paths, and about, sticking true to one thing and not letting myself deviate despite the allure of what something else looks like. We've got the Hierophant, that teacher-student duality sort of archetype energy, something that I really enjoy. I definitely view life as a learning experience, and I am a student. I do like to embody the role of teacher when I feel I am capable of it and when I feel like I have something to offer to others. So the Hierophant is very much something that I see in my outer world in a way that I view and interact with the world around me. You've got the Three of Cups. This one is about my friends and having a good time. Just because this sounds so serious doesn't mean I need to drop everything and live in a room with a cot and one cup and no material possessions. There's room for friends, there's room for fun experiences, and I don't have to give up everything. And I think that my friendships and emotional connections and fun experiences are really what life is about, and I don't want to lose sight of that. We've got the Eight of Swords. This is about a state that I find myself in often. I do resonate very much, very heavily, I guess, with this card. I find myself often in the cage of my own mind, and so in my outer world, I do need to be cognizant of my, I guess, mental exertion and how my mind and thought processes affect the world around me and what comes into being in my life. And then finally, we've got that Nine of Pentacles. This is about me living for myself, knowing that I'm in this life. It's my one life as I am right now, as James Feeney, and there's a lot to be happy for. And at the end of the day, I do need to live it for myself and not for any other purpose or person, not in a selfish way, but really in just keeping with my self-identity, as much as that may seem out of alignment with what I mentioned here in that non-attachment, enlightenment, inner aspect. I do have an ego, we all do, and fully losing that, fully, dissolving that is not something I see happening in this lifetime. And if I'm going to be here, I might as well enjoy it and make the most out of who I am right now and really invest in that. So this is my personal mandala. I hope that this makes a lot of sense. It's fun and interesting. If you're at home trying this, please let me know what it looks like. I'd be very curious how you went about it. I'm not going to go through the whole meditation or journaling process on camera, but what I will do is write a short poem to sum up my mandala, my feelings about it, what it is for me, and I think that is something that I will share. So I'll be right back after I've written that. Okay, so I've written this poem. It's nothing special. It's not a poem I've sat and really thought about. I kind of just let myself write and didn't question it, so be easy on the criticism, or at least the way that you might think of it. It's not a work of art necessarily, but it did come to me when sitting and looking at my mandala. So I will read it. A divine spiral. My soul's gold gilded cage is fleshy and awkward. Red, rosy with vigor, and eyes locked on riches I cannot eat, and so I starve. My insatiable hunger, I consume myself, I cry tears of putrid acid, and vomit flames for bile. When I am empty, icy waters fill my crystalline caverns, and I drown in an amethyst embryo, only to rise on gold-gilded wings of an angel made of the bars of my former cage. My prison was my paradise. So to me, this was very much a cycle, the idea of the cure being found in the poison, so to speak, and the way that something that we view as very limited and binding can be the exact thing that frees us and allows us to transcend our current circumstances. So it was, of course, yeah, I liked the idea of starting in a gold-gilded cage and then finding freedom in the same materials, I guess, that I felt bound by. And so it's a lot to do, I guess it has more to do with perspective and the journey, and less about very literal movement and action, and much more to do with the way I interact with myself and transform in a more introspective way. So that's my little poem. I am going to write this down and journal on it, and maybe even revise the poem, write a more conscious poem. This was just something that sort of flowed out as I was staring at the mandala for a few moments. So I hope that this was a fun exercise. Feel free, of course, to try this at home, but if you're looking to, I guess, have other exercises to try out, the Tarot Activity Book by Andy Matzner is great. There's tons of other exercises in here that are meant to be used for all sorts of purposes. So thanks so much for sending this my way. I hope you all enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you found this fun or interesting, and until next time, bye.